You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday, one of two. This one is not the mailbag. We will do the mailbag. Still, Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire. So today, with the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what we learned from Steve Clinkscale and Jesse Minter, because there was a lot to kind of parse from those. Well, if I can remember, right? Because remember, my memory, not fantastic. It was earlier today. I don't remember what happened 20 minutes ago. I mean, I do, but I don't. So, it used to never be that way, man. I don't know what happened in my life to make that the case. But we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into just the tiny bit of, it's not really even camp intel, just like camp feeling that that one person kind of relayed to me. And we'll just kind of discuss the two parts to that. But let's start off with Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. In his first year at Michigan, it's year two of the defense, however. I do want to say before we even start into him, I think it's funny. I saw, I think it was Meta Wooten piece on Twitter, and see an Ohio State fan trying to clap at him with Vanderbilt being the 119th ranked defense in the country from when he was there. I think I mean, you're taking a mid-level MAC team and dropping it into the SEC East. Of course, that was going to be the case, right? Dude comes from the Baltimore Ravens. He's got a much better group. All I got to say, if you're sitting here saying that right now, if you're looking at that and you're an Ohio State fan and you're just salivating, you're licking your lips, you're rubbing your hands together, going to be in for a rude awakening. That's not saying that I think that necessarily like it's a slam dunk that Michigan wins the Ohio State game, but if you're an Ohio State fan or a Michigan State fan and that is what you are hanging your hat on, I think that you need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize that Michigan's defense is likely going to be a very good unit. And from everything that seems to be the case, that both he and Steve Clinkscale kind of confirmed this notion that the defense is further along. Now, Jesse Minter can't quite say, hey, it's further along than last year. He wasn't around last year. He was at Vanderbilt. He was at with the Baltimore Ravens the year before that. So he hasn't been around this program, but Steve Clinkscale did. We'll get to that eventually here, but he talked a lot about obnoxious communication, right? And that kind of feeds off of what we had heard from both Mike Morris, talking about Mozzie, the communication and all of that kind of stuff, to what Luke Schoonmaker said, that everyone's always screaming at each other. And that's what Jesse Minter said that they've wanted, and that's what they're getting. But it isn't just communicating for the sake of communicating, as he kind of pointed out, as did Clinkscale. When guys are communicating loudly and frequently, the way that we're seeing from this Michigan defense, or at least they're seeing in practice, it is because they know what is being required of them. They know what they're seeing on the other side, and therefore it's working. So that is exactly the type of thing you want to hear. And especially when it's this whole no-star team. Now, that's one of those things that Jesse Minter also was like, listen, we might be entering this season as a no-star team on defense, but ideally by the time that everything is said and done, we've got 4 or 5 stars on this defense. I don't think it's a no-star defense anyway. Junior Colson, I think, as a freshman All-American, is a star. You got a 5-star in Will Johnson, Keon Sabb. I know we don't know yet if those two guys are going to necessarily how much they're going to participate. And certainly more Will Johnson than Keon Sabb. Keon Sabb, a former 5-star, didn't sign that way, but was as high as number 5 in the country. I guess it's not where you start, it's where you finish, of course. But still. And then you add in Mozzie Smith, the number one freak. Like, how are you not a star player if you're the number one freak in the country, according to Athletic? In my eyes, you're a star in that case. And it's not like the two guys we think are going to start as edge rusher, Mike Morris and Taylor Upshaw. Upshaw was a 3-star, I believe, but Mike Morris was a 4-star. It was a Florida State decommit versus a Florida commit in Taylor Upshaw. So you've got some guys there, and I think that Rod Moore might not quite be a star yet, but I think he has the makings of it. RJ Moten and Makari Page were 4 stars. DJ Turner was a 4-star. So I think that they've got some really good pieces on the defense that make you think, okay, this could really work out. This could really be a thing, especially when you think like, okay, yes, Aiden was a star heading into last year. Not as big as you end up getting bigger than we thought. But certainly, I remember the first time that Pro Football Focus was like, hey, we want to do some podcasting with you this year. And I remember they wanted, I think this was even going into 2019, they were like, we want to talk about Aiden Hutchinson. That obviously they're the ones that end up having the Hutch podcast. So that goes to show the types of faith that existed in him. But David Ajabo wasn't a star. Dax Hill kind of was, but not nationally, more regionally. None of those other guys that I can think of were ever really like stars, at least outside of like on campus, really. Josh Ross, Brad Hawkins, Vincent Gray. And even then, that's stretching it, right? So I think it's just fine. As I said to a colleague earlier today, Michigan has done just well without Aiden Hutchinson before he came along. I think they'll be just fine without him. All right, so I asked some other questions of some of these other guys, about some of these other guys, namely the linebackers. I told you guys that I wanted to try to figure out some linebacking things. So 4 names got mentioned. I said, who other than Junior Colson? But of course, the first thing is Junior Colson. Now, that's an improv trick. That didn't work. It's if you ever have been to an improv show and they say, can we get a location like a Starbucks or a movie theater? They're saying that so that they can eliminate the Starbucks and the movie theater, and that's just how that works. But I said anyone but Junior Colson, and he's like, all right, Junior's been great. It's like, yeah, cool. But we did get the ideas of the other ones. Now, we didn't hear anything about Jaden Hood, which tells me he's kind of out as far as the starters are concerned, which is kind of annoying. But he mentioned 4 guys total. Junior Colson, next out of his mouth was Nikhil Green, then Michael Barrett, and then he said Kalel Mullings. He's doing some good things, but obviously splitting time with the running backs. And but he's definitely going to be involved in that front. Then he did mention the true freshmen, saying that they are, they're still figuring things out. They're coming along. And of the freshmen, I mean, Jimmy Rolder and Deuce Spurlock. But he's like, you can see why they were recruited to be these to be these next Michigan linebackers. So that at least kind of gives you an idea as far as that's concerned. At safety, we didn't talk to him as much about safety, but I get the impression that it's really a 3-headed monster there. Rod Moore, obviously. RJ Moten, obviously. Makari Page. It sounds like there will be some kind of rotation there. We'll get to that, I think, when we get to Steve Clinkscale. But and then the rest of the secondary we'll kind of get to. But I think the other thing that was interesting, kind of echoing the Mozzie Smith edge rushers thing, is that they're trying to where Mozzie Smith said, according to Mike Morris, that it's better to have 4 edge rushers than 2, or 4 people who can rush the passer than 2. Is that they're trying to get that production. They're not concerned about replacing Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo as much as they're looking to replace their production, and that's a cumulative thing, right? So, like, you aren't necessarily looking and saying, okay, we absolutely have to have 2 guys that are just this, right? You don't have to have that. You can have a group that does that. And in order to kind of illustrate my point here. Did you know, and you probably wouldn't have, if just randomly, that Michigan State, which had one of the worst defenses in the country, once everything was said and done, I shouldn't say worst, but worst secondary, but wasn't considered to be like an elite defense, was ranked number 6th in the country in sacks, averaging 3.31 per game. Michigan, I'm going to add this up. Michigan was 39th. Michigan had a full 9 sacks less than Michigan State did in one more game, averaging 2.43 sacks per game. If you do it in average sacks per game, Michigan is 53rd. So that's 2021. I want to go back to 2016 when they didn't have Aiden Hutchinson. They didn't have David Ajabo. They had Chris Wormley, Taco Charlton. They had Mo Hurst. They had Matt Godin. They had Ryan Glasgow. The 4th in the country, 46 sacks, 3.54 per game. 2017, 7th in the country, 42. 2018. Not seeing it in my initial purview. As good as that defense is, I don't know why I'm not seeing it. 34th. Okay, 34. So right around that same spot. 2019, 21st with 36. Obviously, 2020, I don't think they're going to be even remotely on the map here. They're not. 104th. 6 games. 1.5 sacks per game. But my point being, again, yes, they lose those 2 guys. They had better sack numbers without those 2 guys. Yes, those 2 were record breakers. They got better overall cohesion from the group, and cohesion is what we're hearing about. All right, let's move on to Steve Clinkscale. My biggest takeaways from him momentarily. Listen, if you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. Have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All of the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it is healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It'll be a perfect treat. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just order them for yourself, like I do. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off of your next order at Built Bar. Built.com, promo code LOCK15 for 15% off of your next order of Built Bar. All right, I personally found Jesse Minter to be, I want to say, more interesting than Clinkscale, but I was a little bit more intrigued. But that said, Clinkscale brings the heat. He brings the noise, comes out and just delivers bangers, one after the other. What he does. Editing the video, it's like, because we can only post 5 minutes. So I try to get in as much as I can, and it's like, I've already transcribed it, so I kind of know where to go. And then I'm starting to look through, and it's like, well, this is like 4 paragraphs. That's going to be like 4 minutes worth of talking. And then you go to it, and it's like a minute. Sometimes you don't realize how fast people talk until you have to type it out, you know? Some people like Juwan Howard. I remember Juwan Howard. It's like the first time that I had to transcribe him, I was like, oh, he talks plenty slow. This will be fine. Because some words he does, but generally, no, he does not. Jim Harbaugh talks slow. That makes my life a lot easier. But anyway, Steve Clinkscale had a lot to say. He added to the obnoxious noise stuff, and the last thing that he got asked is like, what does that look like? And it's like, listen, this is what we want, because obnoxious noise just means that they are confident in themselves and their abilities and what they're seeing, and that allows them to relay it and react to it and all of that kind of stuff. So that's precisely the type of thing that you want to hear about this defense. Kind of joining in with the idea of it being year 2, which for Clinkscale, this is year 2. And he feels pretty good about the fact that he echoed what Jim Harbaugh said, saying like, listen, they are further along. I see a confident group that understands the concepts that we've taught to them. Now, understands was the word that Clinkscale used over and over again. And he even broke down and said, listen, I keep on using that word. I can't tell you how vital that word is, because understanding is a big part of what we are trying to do, is impart the understanding, not just do this because we told you to, but understand why you're doing it. And that helps. And it's not just their particular role. Like he said, you've got guys like Mozzie Smith that knows what's going on in the back end. Said like the offensive guys know what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about, what did he say? A block destroyer. Like he said, we are imparting this knowledge and imparting understanding, getting these players to understand the concepts that we're doing, the why, not just the what, right? Not just the, okay, go hit that guy. All right, why? Don't worry about it. Just go do it. So that, I think, is really good news, is that you have that. As far as the corners, I think one of the interesting things that he had to say is Jamon Green had a better, for all of this talk about DJ Turner, he said Jamon Green had a better spring ball than DJ. So we challenged DJ, and DJ has stepped up, but it wasn't a knock on DJ. He just said Jamon Green was doing everything that we hoped he could do. So that's good news. So you've got those guys. You've got Will Johnson all in the mix there. Safety. It's like we said, Rod Morris, he said he was a little rusty to start out, but now he's starting to look like what they expected him to. Keep in mind, Jim Harbaugh said that he was in the film room just more than anybody. Like, this kid thinks he's going to play this year. Ends up being the case. So you've got that room. It sounds like it's going to be a platoon thing. And what, in the sense of that, Steve Clinkscale said, listen, we want to be at our best in November, December, January. That means we need to keep guys fresh. So it's in our best interest to not just have guys that just play the entire time. So that's great. If they can make that work, if there's no drop off, if there's a good baseline for the secondary, then cool. And I think there will be, especially because you've got two defensive minds in that room that know all about secondary. Obviously, Steve Clinkscale being the defense pass game coordinator, and Jesse Minter, who coached defensive backs with the Baltimore Ravens. That's his forte. That is the way he looks at it. He said, Mike McDonald, he said, like, we're very, very similar, but like I look at things back to front. He looked at things front to back more so because he's Mike McDonald, linebackers guy. He's like, but we have that capability, right? Like I've coached linebackers before. I've done that type of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes in that sense. But I still just have this sneaking suspicion, to echo Jim Harbaugh, that this is going to be a better defense overall. It reminds me a lot of 2017 because I know like there was some excitement for 2017. I don't think anyone thought that defense was going to be as good as it was. I mean, we were talking kind of the same. It was like, they lose 10 starters. How are they going to be good? Yeah, they got Rashawn Gary, and he's going to be awesome. But outside of him, who's going to be good? Well, ended up finishing tied for number 1 or number 2 or something like that in 2017. I just remember that Florida game, looking at that defense and being like, holy smokes. They're just flying around. I get that, and I feel like that's going to be the case again this year. All right, I have just a couple tidbits to get to. I actually talked to somebody, which if you've been listening to this since 2018, you'll know that I usually don't do a lot of fall camp digging. I never have, really, because usually the guys are kind of in a submarine type thing. They don't want to talk. I put out some feelers back like a week ago, and today I heard back a little bit. So I just want to discuss a couple things. It's exactly what I thought, basically. It's exactly what I thought would probably happen. So we will get to that here in just a moment. All right, let's finish out. We just got a couple more minutes. This isn't going a full 30. Works for me since we got the mailbag coming up, and I am very sleepy. Thanks to all the work. Go to wolverineswire.com or wolverineswire.usatoday.com because we have 8 stories posted. 2 of them are transcripts from the coordinators. Plenty of other things out there. Getting into season mode, but it's taking a toll, man. It's not used to writing. I wrote 6 of the 8 things, but I'm not used to doing that in 2 podcasts in a day. In like a month, it will be, the callus will be built. It will be good. Today, it's not there yet. But it continues as well. We got some players on Friday. So, all right. So I spoke to someone about fall camp just a little bit. Didn't really dig too much. Just kind of got some general thoughts. And what I got was the defense is right where they want them to be. It's not like, oh, we just need more. Of course they want more than last year. Takeaways, things of that nature. That got brought up by Steve Clinkscale. But as far as the person I talked to said, listen, guys are flying around. This defense looks like what everyone wants it to be, essentially. So when it comes to the replacing Hutch, he said the same thing I've been saying. It's not, they don't understand why that's the main topic of concern, because that's not something they're concerned with in the sense of they feel like they've got the guys to be able to pick that up. So I feel that much more emboldened, and I feel that the Michigan defense is going to surprise people and that it's going to be like a 15-10 type unit, maybe better, maybe a little bit worse, but I think it's going to be at least right where it was last year. I'm not saying it's going to be number 1 when I say I think it's going to be really good. I'm saying, and it might be, I'm just saying it's not going to be like outside of 30. I would be surprised if it's outside of the top 30, personally. I mean, I don't know what offenses they face that are going to really challenge that anyway. When I look up and down the schedule, I don't really think that any of the non-conference are going to be particularly daunting from an offensive standpoint. Could be wrong. I remember going into 2016, that was the thought with Colorado, and Colorado looked incredible in their first 2 games, and it was like, ooh. But Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn, I think they're going to be fine. I think Colorado State's going to be the one that's going to press them the most. And then I think that Maryland and maybe Michigan State and then obviously Ohio State are the only ones that are going to have some kind of offensive prowess. You're not going to come at me and say that Iowa is going to be a challenge in that offensively, right? I mean, I guess you never know with Iowa. I think that should be their motto. The Iowa Hawkeyes, you never know. But, Penn State, I'm not particularly impressed at the moment. Just to further anger Penn State fans who are upset on On3 about my best fan bases article. I don't remember where I slated Penn State. We didn't even discuss that here on the podcast, I don't think. I put Michigan at number 3, by the way, which is probably upsetting. I put Penn State as 4. I mean, come on. They're upset because they're number 4. I have Nebraska as number 1 for obvious reasons. Anyone who's been to Nebraska will tell you that's like the most enjoyable fan base, and they've been awful for a long time. And yet they still pack that place. They're complaining about that. I have Ohio State as number 2. Not because I think that they're a good fan base. I just think that they're loyal. They care more about the Buckeyes. They don't have a Michigan State 60 miles down the road. They care more about the Buckeyes than they do anything. So, I don't know. I digress. The other thing that I heard from my camp person was the competition at quarterback has been really, really good. And I know that's not necessarily what people want to hear because they want to just hear JJ's running away with it. But the way that what I've been told is Cade remains consistent, but his ceiling is still lower. The problem is right now, JJ will go out there and there will be these flashes where it's like Michigan has never had a quarterback this capable. And then he'll turn around, sometimes in the same practice, and he'll be like, ooh, not good. Remember when I said be careful what you wish for? That's a thing, right? I mean, in order to be that type of guy, to have that Joe Burrow type of season, which I know Joe Burrow is the only one that's ever had that type of season ever. But to be that type of guy, you've got to be able to not do that, right? You've got to be consistently high and inconsistently low. So my source said that he thinks that Cade probably starts and then JJ takes over eventually. That's what everyone says, right? But he's like, that change could happen at any time. It could be a week, could be a month, could be next year. Just waiting on the consistency. Once it gets there, different ball game. Now listen, Jim Harbaugh, staff is going to do whatever gives you the best chance to win. Often the person that gives you the best chance to win, reading between the lines, is that I'm gonna guess that there's some turnovers in there. The person that gives you the best chance to win is someone who doesn't turn the ball over. And I know there's people that are out there and saying like, oh no, I just wanted someone who can make those big plays downfield. Guess what? Cade can do that. It might be more intermittent than what you hope for to some degree. But it's a big thing to not turn the ball over with regularity. It just is. Because you want drives ending in points. Remember Jim Harbaugh with his, 50% of the time Cade McNamara drives end in points. That's a good thing. That's a big thing. You don't want 50% of your drives ending in turnovers or something like that, because teams that turn over the ball over less tend to win the game. That's just how it goes. So, all right, we have another podcast coming up. So this one will go up audio before video, same time as the mailbag. But keep on a lookout for that. So anyway, thank you for watching and or listening. We will talk to you again literally in a matter of moments. Peace.